Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to talk about a watch company that most watch collectors have heard of, but they don't know too much about. And some have never heard about it at all, but it turns out to be a very good one and perhaps even an important one in certain respects. But first of all, we're going to have take a look at Art Leyenberger's watch, and to me, it's one of the best entries into high horology new that's affordable. Okay, a lot of the things that we talk about, very few of us can afford, at least in a new purchase. But this one is fairly affordable. And it wasn't only that; it wasn't bought at a big discount. There was some involved, but it was from an authorized dealer. And so, anyway, let's take a look at this Arts Master Control date. And apparently, this was something I didn't know. Every year, Audemars, not Audemars Piguet, but Zaza Lecoultre has a a special edition, a limited edition for that year. This one's limited to 4,000. I know that's not a highly limited edition, but it is a limited edition. And so for 2017, they'll come out with this particular one. Now, this is one I happen to really like, and so um, unfortunately, right now, I think my watch budget is stretched to its limit, so I'm going to have to pass on this one. But it's really a very, very nice watch and a heck of a good buy for high horology. The reference is 154 8530, and the caliber is Zaza Lecoultre. Of course, it's in-house. They all are. It's an automatic. It's 899/1. So anyway, Art, thank you very much for sharing your watch with us, and that's this week's Watch of the Week. Okay, to understand Parmigiani, Miami, you really have to understand a couple things. First of all, Michael Parmigiani started off like a lot of our top watchmakers start off. He went to the various schools and so forth in watchmaking, and then he became involved in restoration of antique clocks and watches. And if that sounds familiar, the same path, a very similar path, was followed by F.P. Journe. He went to work for an uncle, I think. I think it was his uncle in Paris doing restoration. And the thing that's important about having experience in restoration, you really get into the history of mechanical watchmaking. And even though the company Parmigiani really didn't get started until really the very late 90s when they made clocks for a while, and then I think their first watch wasn't made until 2000 and something. But it was interesting that we sort of have these, what I'll call 21st century watchmakers that are really seeped in some of the best and most interesting horological history, mechanical watch horological history. One is Michael Parmigiani, the other one is F.P. Journe, and there's some other ones too. And they all sort of got going in 2000, or the new millennium, as some call it. Now, another important uh, part of this picture is the Sandoz family and the Sandoz Family Foundation. They saw in Michael Parmigiani the kind of watchmaker that they were interested in supporting and starting uh, a watch company. Okay, now the the first watch that came out of wristwatch that came out of Parmigiani was called the Ionica. Okay, now this particular one is in platinum. But notice the back of the case. Okay, you can see it, and it has a tornado shape, and the shape of the movement's also tornado. Now, some people don't think that's very important, having a movement shape with the same shape as shape or size as the case. I'm one of those who do. Sometimes it's not important. I have my Ella Raw has a pretty good sized case with a little bitty movement in it, and the movement is thin for it, and all it does is keep hours and minutes. Doesn't even have a second hand of any sort. So, okay, under those circumstances, it's not doing as much, it's not pulling as much weight, so to speak, as some of these other ones. But in this particular one, you have an 8-day of power reserve. And 8 days is going to take a pretty good sized barrel for your, or multiple barrels, to keep everything going for 8 days. Now, actually, it's sort of an interesting one. You get a real week out of it, because if you let it run for 7 days and then on the 8th day you rewind it again, that's much more of a true 8-day one than one that runs 7 days and on the last day you hope that it doesn't run out of gas before you have to wind it again. Okay, so the Ionica was the first one that came out of Parmigiani, one of the first ones anyway. Now, behind this was a company called Vaucheur. Now, Vaucheur was also owned by the Sandoz family, and what was the movement inside the Parmigiani is what was called the Vaucheur Manufacture Fleurier, or VMF 6000, and the Parmigiani caliber was 110.01. All right, now this becomes an important relationship. First of all, Vaucheur makes spectacularly good movements. They'll work with the watchmaker and so forth to give them what they want. They're not just like, here, take this. Now you can see this because look at the shape of the movement. The movement matches the shape in the design that Parmigiani had. So it wasn't just something, here's something off the shelf, you can throw that in there, but it was designed for the watch that was made. Now, later on, they had the 20th anniversary was in 2016. They took 1996 as the starting date. I believe they actually started off with clocks, and so 2016 was the 20th anniversary. And they had this watch called the Colpa Hebdomadaire. And the Hebdomadaire was simply a new name for the iconic, the first one that they had. It's the same tornado shape, same movement, same everything. Except in this one, they had a limited edition. I think this is a real limited edition of like 10 examples that they made. And they had a gold base plates, and they had gold bridges in that thing. So it was really a very, very nice watch. And but it was basically the same one as they had originally, except it was that good that they kept it. They may have made Vaucheur may have made some adjustments in the movement. I'm not really sure, but it's one of the most beautiful movements. Forget the dial. The movement is just gorgeous. It has all kinds of little engravings on it and everything. Okay, so I mean, here you have this company that's coming along, and it's 20 years, and they came out with one of the, to me, is more iconic of Parmigiani is the Colpa line. They have that again. They have that tornado shape, except they really have several different ones. One is called the Colpograph, which is an automatic with sort of almost a sports watch, Then they have the Piccola, which is a bigger of the sports watch. They have the Calparisma, which is a woman's watch, but it has an automatic movement in it. Now, you can tell that that big tonneau is not going to shape in that little Calparisma. And so one of the characteristics that you're going to see in Parmigiani is that they make the movement for the watch. Again, they don't say, oh, okay, well, you got this movement. All right, we'll design a watch around the movement. Sort of like the tail wagging the dog. And finally, they have one called, another woman's watch called the Calpa Donna, and it's also a quartz watch. Okay, so that's the entire Calpa line. Now, before going on, one of the things that I wanted to look at is the manufacture. And starting with the movements, what we're going to see 5 different companies here. So you're going to say, wait a minute. These guys are like Harry Winston. Everything is outhouse. Well, not exactly. The ownership, either in whole or part, is by Parmigiani, and you have a system that started off. Now remember, they're only 20 years old, and they got off to a very good start, and immediately almost were recognized as a high horology watchmaker. And they were. Not only were they recognized as such, they were that. They were very much that. Okay, so how did they do it? Well, you have these 5 companies, and they work together under the umbrella, the ownership or directorship, either all in part, of Parmigiani, rather than starting with a big warehouse to say, okay, we're going to hire this guy, we're going to hire this guy for this. Instead, they went out and they either bought or created. Some of these companies they actually created themselves. All right, well, the movements company, Watch Manufacture Fleurier, VFM, they were making movements on pretty much on demand. All right. If somebody wanted to start a little watch company, and they still do it too, you can say, hey, I'd like to start my own watch companies, and I'll start off with a couple hundred watches and see what happens. That's the one to go to, and they'll make excellent ones too, and they'll work with the designer and so forth. So they really have an excellent reputation. I mean, their reputation is as good for movement makers as Patek Philippe or any of the other well-known watch companies that are associated with high horology. Okay, now what they do the assembly, they do the research and development, and they do the CAD, the CAD, the computer-aided design prototyping. So we usually think a movement company does everything. They go out and they dig the gold and so forth, but they don't. They take different parts and they assemble them. They do the design and so forth, and then they put it all together. They have somebody else do the other parts, and the other companies that Parmigiani works with are really outstanding. Another one is Calpa. They make a escapement wheel, a pallet fork, balance, and balance spring. A lot of times, companies like Beauvais make their own balance springs, and that's a big deal. But that's okay. Calpa, I have a hard time saying it. They make excellent ones. Now the fastenings are made by Elwin. Now you think, okay, a screw or whatever holds the pinions, spindles, and wheels and so forth that go in there. Somebody's got to make those things. They don't just hey, Rolf, whip one up for me. These things take specialized machines and specialized skills. By the way, Parmigiani does things both with machine made or in special cases by hand. So they have a really depth in skills and what they have, and also what's referred to as vertical organization in the manufacture of their watches. The dials are made by a company called Quadrants and Havelage. These are machined. They do the machining and the dial work, the treatment, including the deloche, the sandblasting, satin finish, snailing, and eparginol. These are, again, this is a company that is recognized as part of Parmigiani, but also separate. Okay. Now this becomes important. All right. Finally, the cases are made by Les Artisans Boutiers, known as Lab. They're basically the case makers. Okay. Now, what they have to do, now, you make a case, you get a bunch of, say, okay, how much watch goes in here, and plop it in there. They have to coordinate the dial with the movement in a waterproof container, and they specialize in this. And then they do the middle part of the watch, where they have to be nice and smooth and look nice. This one I have on right now is pretty simple, as a matter of fact. So hard to show an example of that. Okay, now, so here you have this company, Parmigiani, who is, now they're really the Sandoz family foundation is sort of the big money behind this whole thing. They're part of I think it's a big pharmaceutical company. Well, that's okay. Because this is, let's face it, they're making mechanical watches, which is not a quick rich scheme, but rather it's. I think the foundation almost see this as preserving the art of making this kind of high horology. Okay, so that's how they're made. They're done with this, with all of these companies that are both part of and separate from Parmigiani. And they can make extra money because turns out that there are a lot of other companies who would never admit it, get their a lot of parts from Parmigiani. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other models they make. Now, we looked at the Calpra, and that's important because of a lot of different things. The Toric was another early one. It's a very clean kind of, you look at that, you can tell the time with a quick glance. I love watches like that. It's the Toric. The Tonda is a chronograph, and it's more of it's edging toward the sports watch, but not quite. The Ovale is one of my favorites. It has those special hands that go out and in as the watch goes around. These are very expensive watches too. Let me tell you, they're hugely expensive. And the Ovales, like I said, these are certainly one of my favorites because the mechanics behind it are very sophisticated, and to get those hands to go in and out as they go around the oval is very interesting. They're in the most at 9:15 and out the most at 6 o'clock, so that'll give you an idea. Okay, love that Ovale. I like the Toric too. Like I said, it's almost Bauhaus. All right, finally, you have sort of the car guys, the Bugatti Aerial Life. This is a watch I really like too. I like that green. It's a special green color there's a whole story behind that. The Pershing looks like a diver's watch at first glance. But it's a yachtsman's watch. On the back there's a picture of a sort of a modern yacht, not one of those sailing yachts or anything, like the four-masted creature on the back of an overseas. Okay, let me sort of end this with, this is their 20th anniversary. Look at somebody did to that movement. You have that engraving. You have even out of gold. You have all of the screws and all of these things that are made effectively in-house. Now, here's the good news for collectors. These things are expensive as all get out coming out the door, but they don't hold their price. Now, some people say, oh, well, that's awful. I want to, what if I want to flip it? Well, you're out of luck if you want to flip it. These are watches that, if you're thinking of buying one for flipping, it's not a good investment. If you're thinking of one to have a really good high horology watch at a good price on the used market, they are fantastic. They even take a big hit sometimes, even when they're new. Go to a place like Joma Shop and some other places like that to find them. Even on our Chrono 24, you'll find a lot of condition zeros. This is a great watch. If you're interested in the value and the history of watchmaking, you like mechanical watches, don't pass these up. They're really, but they're not for flipping. Trust me. Okay, this has been Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Sunday, we'll see you that's our review day. I don't think we're going to be having a review this Sunday. We're going to have something special though. And also to remember, this is, you've got like 1 week if you're interested in winning one of 2 free watches in the Grand Prix picks. Hope you enter. Take care. See you Sunday.